Hello and welcome to another episode of the ex-Jehovah's Witness. I am Mitch, and this is continuing the series I'm doing EXJW interviews. And today I have the pleasure of interviewing Delores. And hello, welcome.
Hello, thank you.
And it is great to have you on here. We started following each other online, social media, and then you were in the private Facebook group that we have, and you
Yeah.
expressed interest to come on here and let me ask questions. But I think
Absolutely.
I'm excited about it. I appreciate it, though. Individuals wanting to speak up, and I'm excited to give a voice to just all of us with different backgrounds. We've all been out
Mhm.
different times. You were just telling me before we started recording, you've been out 22 years, correct?
Yeah.
So,
Hmm.
I'm interested to talk with you too because I just came out December of last year.
Hmm.
Yeah, I have questions about the deconstruction period and all that.
Right.
Yeah,
It,
so
it, it's interesting.
yeah, some days I'm fine, some days I'm not.
Exactly. And I'm still that way all these years later. I'm still that way.
Oh,
So,
wow. Oh my goodness.
mhm.
Okay, so that the listeners and the viewers can get kind of a perspective. Um,
Mhm.
how long were you in the Jehovah's Witness religion?
Um, Technically, I would say I was born in. My mom started studying when I was in diapers. She got baptized when I was 3. So that's the only thing I remember. She met somebody street witnessing, and we were still living in St. Louis. And he was an elder, and she told me they started studying over the phone. And I always thought that was odd because usually you don't see elders studying with women. It's usually they pass it off to their wives, but they were studying over the phone. And she started studying not that she was interested in it, but she was interested in the Bible. So she was going to prove him wrong. She was, she had her whole, book out, and they were going toe to toe. And so she told me that whenever she would get too passionate about something, he would play the flute for her. And I'm like, he's playing the flute for you. And just in my mind, because I'm like, normally that doesn't go down like that. So I'm like, okay, that's interesting. So they studied like this for about a year. And then she found out that my dad had family in Florida and she always wanted to move out of St. Louis. So we started making preparations to do that. And he made sure that he got her in contact with a sister that was in Florida. And so she picked up studying from me.
Okay, so he studied with her for like a year,
Over the phone.
and then when y'all moved, he handed it over.
Right. He
Oh,
contacted Kingdom Hall where we moved.
okay, I will
Hmm.
say I agree with you. That's kind of weird.
Hmm.
I've never heard of like you say. Usually, if a brother meets someone and they're interested, they'll turn it over to a
Right.
female. So
Right.
that was different.
But it makes sense later on because I'm kind of jumping ahead, but later on, as his family came down to visit with us. At that point, my mom had separated from my father. Eventually, they got divorced. My dad was never a witness, didn't want anything to do with it. But him and his family came down, visited with us. They kept in contact over the years. My mom ended up relocating back to St. Louis about maybe 30 years after she moved here. And she relocated back. She was no longer with her second husband, who was an elder. She didn't have grounds for a divorce. She was no longer with him. And she had gotten sick. She had early onset Alzheimer's
Hmm.
that she didn't really share. So he knew she was back in the area. He contacted my aunt and told my aunt that he was interested in my mom and he wanted to marry her and that he would take care of her. So like all these stories she told me, and when he said that, that was a red flag. And my aunt told him, no way, no way. She's not in that position to do that. So those stories kind of clicked for me at that point. So yeah, because that was really rare that she would start studying with an elder for that long a period of time.
Hmm. And so, are you saying they got together?
No, they never got together.
Okay, okay, all right,
She married somebody else when we were in Florida. By the time I became like a preteen,
okay,
and then they separated.
okay. But at that point in Florida, uh, you all are in the religion.
Yes, at that point we're in the religion. My mom got baptized about 2.5 years after we moved to Florida.
Okay, all right.
She studied with the pioneers once she got to Florida.
She had a legit study.
She had a legit study, face to face, no over the phone, no flute playing when she got mad. She was in it.
You know,
She had a real study, right?
I was laughing when you said that because I just had the mental picture in my head. She
Right, right.
like pull out the flute.
Exactly. He would start push because knowing my mom's personality, and when she feels she was right about something, oh, he probably definitely had to do that because she didn't go in with the normal intent of believing everything. She wanted to prove everything was wrong.
A lot of people do that. They
Hmm.
want to prove that it's wrong, and then most of the time the witnesses end up love bombing them into the truth.
Right, and that's exactly what I think happened, especially when by the time we moved to Florida, her and my dad didn't stay together too much longer. She didn't have any family here, and I think that she had several family members that passed away kind of abruptly. So
Mm-hmm.
the idea of paradise on earth was really appealing to her because I always wondered and never asked her, like, why, what caused you to be a witness? Because it wasn't like she wasn't a Bible student before. She used to always read the Bible. That was her favorite book.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely think it was the hope
Oh
of
yeah,
seeing,
yeah. And so
yeah.
you're a teenager in Florida. How was it? How was the truth with you being a teenager? Like, did you really believe as a teenager?
I didn't. I really didn't believe, especially by the time she got married, which happened kind of quick. She was single for a long time. And so by the time we had a brother transfer over into our hall, and he began going to our book study. So the first day, he came to the book study, and on our way home, me and my mom were walking because it was all within walking distance. And I literally said to her, "You're not going to marry him, are you?" Now she doesn't say anything about him. There was nothing, no, but I was like, I was pretty with it. I wasn't, I was really dialed in because, my mom always talked to me as if, not as if I was an adult, but she was really direct with me. And she was like, no, why would you even ask that? And like a month later, he came over to our house and asked her out.
Okay.
So I was like, oh, I kind of figured that. So everything happened pretty quick because they were dated for about a year and then they were married.
Okay. And uh, was he a servant or an elder?
He was an elder when they got married. Shortly after they got married, I would say like 6 to 9 months later, he was the presiding overseer. So he got appointed as the presiding overseer.
Okay. Man, you were living your teen years like I was, because my father was a president over there too. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. All right. I
basically.
wonder if you were like me then, but
Probably, from what, definitely, because I really,
I noticed the kids
I,
were rough.
huh? I didn't hear that. What did you say?
The presiding overseer kids were rough.
Right, right, right. Definitely. Me and him would go toe to toe. I mean, I I definitely was very direct with how I felt. If they asked me a question, whether I would get in trouble or not, I would always speak my mind. 'Cause 9 times out of 10, I was going to get in trouble anyway. And I was just like, okay, why even hold back? So,
So, have any doubts at all about the what you were learning? Did you have doubts, and if so, did you express them as you were a teenager?
I did have doubts, but I always knew to be very careful with how I asked those questions. I would kind of ask them, not that I didn't know the answer, but just to ask open-ended questions to see how they would fill in the blanks for me. And I would ask enough and ask enough, but never really state my what I really truly thought, why I was asking. And the answers just never made sense to me.
Okay. So
So,
at that point, did you feel like this is something I'm going to do even when I'm an adult? I'm going to be in this religion.
no, I knew that I just didn't agree with certain things, but also at the same time, I felt the pressure of doing it still because even though I wasn't born in, you still have that same expectation placed on you that okay, all of your peers are getting baptized. You know, it's just the thing you have to do.
Yeah.
So even though I knew that, because I wanted my freedom, I was going to be moving out soon. I had my own little plan. I still felt like I had to do it. So in relation to my peers, I got baptized much later than
Okay. Oh, yeah. How old were you when you got baptized?
I was 18 when I got baptized. And then 4 years later, I was out. But
Okay.
I had already, between that time period, I had already moved out of the house.
Okay. Like before you got baptized?
No, 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 after I got baptized.
Okay, I got you. I got you. All right. So, okay, 18, and we all get baptized at different ages. You know,
Mm-hmm.
some
Yeah.
some of my friends were young. I was 16 myself.
Mm-hmm.
Another city I lived in, there was an elder son, and he got baptized like a little bit before he was 20.
Oh my goodness. Well, yeah,
Yeah, he was born.
yeah. And I was like, maybe, there is some truth to this, and maybe, Armageddon will come out. I'll get through without actually,
Hmm.
getting baptized. But I was like, on the other end, the pressure to talk. But
Yeah,
so I
and
caved and.
you made an interesting point when we were before we started recording. How did you
Mhm,
feel because of what we were taught and what
mhm.
the end would come? Like, what was your outlook for the future?
I didn't have any plans because I didn't feel like I needed to make any plans. It was always like, okay, higher education was not talked about. Um, my plan was in the area that I lived in, we had a vocational technical high school that if you went there, it prepped you to go right into the job force versus, requiring to get secondary education.
Mm,
So that was my plan, but I didn't even think that it would go that far because honestly, I didn't think that the world would look the way it did by the time I graduated. So I didn't have like a plan when it came to that because I was of the mindset that we wouldn't be here as we are now.
yeah, that's how a lot of us felt. I made a lot of choices like from 11th and 12th grade on, like in anticipation of the end being here.
Right,
I was like, oh, I'll probably
right,
be 30. You know?
right. Me too. And then when I turned 30, my mom was still living in Florida at the time, and it really hit me differently because I had like a whole meltdown, and it was just because I didn't expect to be here, and it felt like I was 10 to 12 years behind everybody else who was turning 30 because I didn't plan that way.
Yep. Man, I know exactly what you mean.
Right. And it was just like, you know, and I couldn't understand why she wasn't as like bothered by it than as I was, you know?
Yeah. And so coming up, uh, was there anything that you went through uh, because like we couldn't do birthdays or holidays?
Mhm.
How did you deal with all that?
Well, growing up, since we weren't around, or I wasn't around any immediate family to like, I had aunts and uncles, but everybody lived out of state. My dad did have family members that lived in state, but since he wasn't involved with co-parenting, I didn't run into those opportunities where I would get a chance to like celebrate or whatever. So it was never introduced to me that way. I
Mm,
remember one time my dad did bring over our birthday cake and my mom kind of flipped out and she had such a strong personality that he didn't do it again. So even when he did show up, that would happen and he didn't really push back and like say, hey, I'm doing this to her. You know what I'm saying? So that didn't come about. Now, when we did, visit family members back in Missouri, we would go around the holidays only because that was when she had time off work. And like, let's say we were there for Thanksgiving, I would eat with them. she would be so mad at me, but at the same time, because she would stand her ground, she wouldn't be eating. But I was gonna do it because I'm thinking it may be Thanksgiving today, but it's gonna be the same turkey tomorrow. That was how
Yeah.
I thought, and I didn't think that it was a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But she would, after dinner was over and we were away from everybody, she would go off, but I still do it anyway.
Yeah. And did you have any like trying to think of the right way to ask, did you have anything like personally or any tendencies where you were like, oh, I know like this would not be accepted in this religion, so I don't know if I'll still be one when I'm an adult. Did you have anything like
Yeah, yeah. Definitely, I knew that I was not interested in dating any brothers. I knew that. And so when you're in a certain age group, I knew that the lifestyle that I, who I truly was, I knew that I could not be. That was another reason why too, because, I just knew that it was not, my lifestyle wouldn't fit into that.
that?
So that was another reason why. Like I was thinking to myself that even if this is the truth, I just can't be in it. So parts of it I believed, parts of it I didn't. Like I wanted to believe the nice parts, the seeing your loved ones again, all of those good things. I wanted to believe those things, but I felt like I just felt like, okay, I already know this about myself. I'm not going to be able to fulfill this, and I'm okay with that. That's the realization I came to.
Mm. And not, you're talking about what they consider like an alternative lifestyle.
Correct.
Correct.
Hmm.
Okay. So how would it make you feel, like during meeting parts or assembly or convention when they're very strongly saying how they felt about that? Like, how would that make you feel?
It was so uncomfortable too because I felt like it was just there's so many things that go against the lifestyle, but they chose to highlight on that one thing. There's so many commandments you can break. There's so many things you can break. And I was always very vocal. So I would tell my mom that, they spend one time on this, but they talk about gluttony, and we have some elders that fit in that category. You know what I'm saying? Like, why would you just fit, why would you just spend that one so much time on that? You know what I'm saying? So, it just made me feel uncomfortable, too. And I don't know if they had it where you were. They would have the wham talk. Do you know what I'm talking about? The wham talk, like they had to give the wham talk. You remember who Wham was, right?
Oh, like George Michael?
Right.
Yeah.
So because of his lifestyle, they would call it the wham talk where I was,
Okay.
where they would talk about, right. They would talk about that. And I thought it was everybody known it as the, because they would say it so casually. And I'm like, yeah, we have to give the wham talk, or there was a local need for something like that. And I'm like, okay, well, I thought this is what everybody was calling it, you know?
Oh my goodness! No, I don't know. When he first came out, man, so many women liked him, and the girls liked him,
Right,
and yeah,
right.
the Wham talk. That's funny.
Hmm. And I thought it was just like throughout the organization, people called it that, but I know it's something maybe specific to the area that I was in.
Yeah, that's why I was like, what?
Right.
Oh my goodness! So yeah, that had to be kind of like out there for you if that's
Hmm.
who you knew that you
Hmm.
were inside, and then to hear like the stuff that the organization push on that because they're very very anti.
Right.
You
And
know,
then like,
they're
be,
vocal about it.
they are, and then being a woman in the organization, while you don't, you really can't look at, post-secondary education. So it's either, oh, you're going to pioneer or you're going to get married. And it was none of those things. Like when we would go over that, in a talk and they would talk about the capable wife. And I told my mom straight up, I couldn't even do that. That's a lie. I said, what is he doing? We were, I said, what is he doing? At this point, I was like, I told my mom I wanted nothing to do with that. She would laugh but at the same time, I was always very like, no, no, not even. So I was like, nope,
Now, did
nope,
she
nope.
know? Did she have any idea?
At the time, I would say no. I was outed after I had moved out by someone I dated because they knew that my mom did not know. So they told me they were going to do it, and they did exactly that. Um, After that, I think she handled it differently because by that time she was going through her own situation with the elder she had married. So it was the timing that kind of saved the relationship, and it didn't do what it would have done if things were in a better place with that. Like I don't think she could deal with two of them at once. So I won't say she didn't cut me off. We stopped speaking briefly for a period of time just because that news was out there like that. But I didn't get the same backlash as other people may
Okay. And so, like, nobody really knew until you moved out.
have. Right. Nobody really knew. When I moved out, even though I would still attend sporadically, I was very sure to move further away outside of the territory. So if I go to the store or any place like that, I wouldn't run into anybody.
Hmm.
So
And
I
it's,
was very, but
it's we are so indoctrinated with
hmm
a part of that that there are still things I have to like. I'll hear something, and then I had a freak out moment, and then I'm like, wait, I'm not part of that life anymore.
right.
Being a witness. But yeah, it's like my daughter, and we mentioned in her episode that she recorded with me,
hmm
but yeah, you know, she's like bi.
hmm
She says she's bi. I tell her she's lesbian because I don't want her with a guy. So it's like she said I have to be the only father that gaslights the daughter into saying
Right.
she's
Right.
lesbian.
That's a new one. Right.
But
That's a new one.
but it's like we were talking even today, and she just said she never felt comfortable uh,
hmm
at the hall because she
Right.
knew like who she was, and that's I've told I've always told my family this and other people. It's like when it comes to things like that makes us who we are.
hmm
I just they tell you need to read the Bible more. You need to go out and field service more.
hmm
Make sure your personal study is up and you read the Bible daily, and like that's supposed to magically just take away anything that makes us who we are.
Exactly.
And I tell everybody I don't think like we are who we are, and I
hmm
just don't think we can make people stop being who they are. Like
No.
that's just where I'm at. And it's a
Exactly.
relief like to be away from it because they are very,
hmm
like I said, they're very anti homosexual
Extremely.
and everything like that. And
Extremely.
I'm sorry.
hmm Extremely.
Oh,
I have a friend. We grew up together. He's a witness. We went to school together. All those things, and he's not a witness now. He was very, open about his sexuality. Like nobody knew. He was serving as a ministerial servant, and then he met with the elders and told them about his true feelings. And the interesting thing about him was his dad was on the committee. He was very open, like nobody had to report him. He was being a good witness and sharing, hoping to come up with solutions for it. And there was no solution because there's no middle ground. Like even though you're doing the right thing, you're coming, there's no middle ground. So he ended up getting this fellowship. Even though we grew up together, we didn't go to the same hall. His dad was an elder in a different congregation that met in the same building. And he told me that when they read that he was a fellowship, they give the note to the brother on the stage and they don't know until they get the note. It happened to be his fleshly brother that read that and he wasn't prepared. He didn't even know his brother was getting the fellowship. And he said when he opened it, he saw his brother open it and like a tear come out of his eye and he had to read it. So I was thinking, how cool is that? Like, what you're going to be announcing. Couldn't you have had somebody else announce that? But, there's no middle ground. There's no, so as hard as they are on that, and then when you look at the child CSA that goes on, and they don't have that same stance, that really irritates me. And
Yeah.
even when you see people dating with such a wide age range, because I don't know if that happened in your home, but there's a big age gap where the sister's always significantly younger and the brother is a lot older. That is a red flag for me because when I was a teenager, I saw that.
Mm.
And I even talked to my mom about it. There was this one of my peers, I won't call her friend because I didn't have too many friends that were witnesses, but she was a year older than me, and she started dating someone. Now, if I remember right, he had to be like in his early 30s. I say 32. At the
Mm.
time, she was 17. She was still in high school.
Mm.
So I was like, once it came to light, and it was like a common thing that they were dating. I was talking to my mom. I was like, "Don't you think that's odd?" I said, "I can't believe her mom is letting her do that." And she acted like it was normal. And she told me, she was like, "Yeah, he had asked Sam about you." I said, "I don't know for what." He was like, "But he found out that you were younger than her." And I was like, "I don't know why he would be doing that because that's a no. I don't know why he would ask Sam anything because no." But that's what it was. That's what it was. I was always like really, I was really open with how I felt. If it was a no, they were gonna know it was a no.
Mhm.
But yeah, so I was thinking to myself, they have such a stance on that, but why isn't this a red flag?
Yeah. Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
it starts at the top. The governing body.
Right.
Yeah, it starts with them. That's the culture they have there. And
It really is. Because even like I remember when my mom she was never a pioneer because most of the time I was in, she was a single parent, so she was working maybe two jobs at once, but she was out in service as much as possible. But she she would always talk about how we're so different and look at the Catholic Church and the priests and the kids, and because that was really going on in the 90s. So she would, that would be why we were so much different and why we were the true religion. We don't have those kind of issues. And I'm thinking to myself, yes, we do. You know what I'm saying? Because, you would hear different things. It wasn't as it is now because we didn't have the internet to connect everybody, but you
mm,
would hear certain things. And I remember we had, when she had finally separated, just to give you some background, the elder she married,
mhm,
they ended up, about 6 months after they got married, he quit his job.
mm,
And he never held on to gainful employment at that point. So she felt like she was supporting him. And elders would come to our house constantly and have meetings with them. Now I wasn't part of it, but I was in the house. I was upstairs, so I would hear, and they basically told him that he had to support his family. He had to get a job, and he was just dragging his feet. For whatever reason, he didn't do it, and they gave him an option of either being removed or stepping down, which I didn't feel they should have given him an option. You know, if
mhm.
you're not doing X, Y, Z, you have to be removed because
Yeah.
then it looks like something else that it isn't. And so he chose to step down, and naturally everybody thought it was related to us because he's an elder, so it couldn't have been him. So it was that she was dealing with, So by the time she was like, it took her a while to even say what was going on. Like I was the one saying like, you have to say something, you know what I'm saying? And I was like, he should move because he moved into where we were, and so she finally came to stay with me for a while and found her own place. So when she found her own place, she moved directly across from another teen home. And so one of her neighbors, who was really friendly with her, and she was like, you know what? I think he used to be a witness or he may have studied. I don't know how, but everybody knows somebody that has contact with a witness or used to be a witness.
Mhm.
So she finally asked him one day, and he revealed that he used to be a witness. So she was right. So she was asking him what happened. And so he explained he went to a Kingdom Hall in Miami. We lived in Tampa, and further away from Miami. He said that there was some child CSA, child SA going on,
Mhm.
and that it wasn't him involved. He didn't like the way the situation was handled. He didn't feel the perpetrator was disciplined enough. And so
Mhm.
he was very vocal about that, and the elders disfellowshipped him.
Oh wow.
So he explained all this to my mom, and her next sentence to him was, well, I can't speak to you anymore. And like my heart sunk because I'm like, why would you say that? He didn't do anything wrong. and they weren't speaking, having each other's phone numbers. It was just a casual hi and bye because they were neighbors. So I'm thinking this has this much of a hold on you that you can't understand why after he explained it. But that was the reason why he got disfellowship. So it was nothing directed to him, but he was just too vocal about what he thought.
Mm-hmm. That'll get you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so you said you moved out when you were 18.
Yeah, I had just graduated, so I moved out about maybe 6 to 9 months after I graduated, and I moved in with a roommate she wasn't baptized, but she was an unbaptized publisher.
Okay. Oh, unbaptized publisher. And then, so after you moved out, were you continuing
Mhm.
going to the meetings?
Less and less, just enough so that my mom wouldn't ask me questions, just to show my, you know what I'm saying. Just I would do like pop-ins here and there.
Did your roommate know, like, how you really felt about the truth?
Yeah, yeah, because even though she was just an unbaptized publisher and no intention of being baptized, so that's why we were roommates because we were on the same page, and we both were leading double life,
Oh,
and I and even though we both were, I was never the type like I would see other kids or other youth doing certain things, but I would never be the type to report anything. Like I wouldn't even tell my mom what I saw. I just didn't feel comfortable doing that because I'm like, if you say Jehovah sees everything, well, he sees this, so I'm not going to say anything.
mm,
It's going to come out anyway. I just wouldn't be the one. So I wouldn't say anything.
okay. And so 18, and then when did you just stop going?
I would say I stopped going by the time I was like 21,
Okay.
22.
So about
I was,
3 or 4 years.
and right. And so she would like ask me to come to the memorial with her, ask me to come here, ask me. So I would occasionally do that.
Mm-hmm.
But then after a while, I was like, nah, no, no, no. She was, she
Get
was,
to a
she
certain
was
point, you're just tired of faking.
right, right, right. And there is a difference because she had moved Kingdom Halls because she was no longer in the territory. She was still married to her second husband, but no longer living with him. So it's different when you go to a different Kingdom Hall because you're received in a different way. They don't know you. They're still trying to fill you out. They ask you a whole bunch of questions. So when I would visit her hall and she would introduce us together, they would wonder why we had different last names. What they really want to know is which one of us was married, I think. Because
Mm-hmm.
I had elders basically ask why was our last name different, and I thought that was odd for him to directly ask like that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I would visit sometimes, but that like really turned me off.
Oh yeah. And so the $1 million question: how did you leave? Did you walk away, fade away? Were you disfellowship?
I faded away. I just knew that I was not going in that back room. Like I had heard stories about the back room. I'm like, they're not going to get a chance to get me back there, asking me all these questions. I was really, really clear on that. Like I faded away, and then my mom told me that they had made an announcement that I'm not good association, but I was never like in any way, shape, or form like disfellowshipped. And even when I saw people, I didn't have any real close connections. So basically while they weren't talking to me, what they didn't realize is I wasn't looking to speak with them. So I would just treat them as if they were invisible because at that point, it didn't matter to me.
So walked away, faded away. How did life look for you when you faded away? Like, did you already have a plan that you were executing?
Yeah, I already had a plan, so I knew that I did not want to move back home. And like I only had a roommate for about 6 to 7 months. That did not work out. I realized that I wanted to live by myself. So I made plans to get my own place from there. And sometimes I would work two jobs. I wouldn't tell my mom,
Mm,
but I did everything I did to stay on my own. So when she did find out, she's like, you can always move back home. And I'm like, no, I'm not trying to do that. She's like, if you need any help, just let me know. And I'm like, no, I got it. I got it figured out. So I was very determined not to fail because you all hear the stories about people that fade away, people that don't go to the Kingdom Hall, get this fellowship, something bad always happens or whatnot. They push that narrative like, oh, if you're not at the hall, something bad's gonna happen. So nothing bad ever happened. The funny thing was that even though I was out, I wasn't like celebrating holidays. I wasn't doing all the normal things because a lot of that is tradition. So since I didn't grow up celebrating those things, I didn't gravitate to them.
Hmm. Do you like? How are you now? You still don't do
Now,
holidays?
well, now it's different because my spouse does holidays, so I just roll with it. But to me, I could take it or leave it because I didn't, it wasn't like a part of it. I wasn't a part of that, so it's just like okay, I don't, I just recently started celebrating my birthday. I'll say that.
All right.
I'll say that. So
And what about? Did you gravitate towards any other religion or like take on different spiritual beliefs after you left?
after I left, I really struggled because I was thinking to myself, all of what I kind of had a ringside seat to what my mom went through with her second marriage, just how I felt. I really just was anti-organization and almost did not believe in God because how could all this go down like this and there would be a God? Because, that was my foundation. I didn't have any other reference points in religion. I didn't get a chance to study or look into any religion. So that really was like I was there. But then I started thinking it took a lot from me. I'm not going to let it take this from me, my belief system. There is something because, I'm still okay. I'm still doing well. There must be some type of divine God out there looking out for me because, there were some times like it wasn't always easy, being in a sheltered environment. So even though I was really vocal, there's a difference between being really vocal in an organization and then being outside in a functioning in a world that you were shielded from. So I learned very quickly how to navigate those things. But, in learning, I knew that I had to have some kind of protection. So that's when I realized there's a difference between being religious and being spiritual
Mm,
for me. That's where it came in. And, I was always turned off against organized religion at that point
mm,
because it was so odd to me that everybody was so comfortable with saying hearing and saying the governing body said, but what about what God said? That was so odd to me. And just like when you look at the demographics of the governing body from even from when I was in, I remember, when there was a black governing body member, that was the talk. When, oh, look at so and so, because you didn't see that. And I was always wondering, why is everybody American? If we're all over the world,
yeah.
why is everybody from the United States? Or how does that, that just didn't play out for me like that. It just didn't add up.
Hmm. Yeah. That's a huge stickler for me too. Is the
Hmm.
makeup of that body. And so
Right.
now you have a belief system, but
Yeah.
just not organized religion.
No, just not because that took up so much space and it like infiltrated every aspect of your life. You didn't have a break from it. Like even when you worship at a regular church or whatever, you go, you worship, you leave. But it's just like it seemed like it was all encompassing,
Oh,
everything under a microscope. And even when I went to school was a bit of a break, but when I went to high school it was different because that was known as the witness school. It was such a high population of witnesses there. They would even have a daily text read every morning, and a group would meet. So if I didn't show up for that, which 90% of the time I wasn't going to, that would get back that, oh, Delores didn't make the test.
hmm.
So I'm like, we have enough meetings. I wasn't I wasn't gonna do that. I wasn't gonna do that. So
You
but
can't.
yeah, a teacher would allow that to go on in their classroom before school starts. So they would meet there and do that and I'm like, nah.
Yeah, I never went either. You got picked on
Yeah,
enough.
right, exactly. Exactly. And then just like but like I said, I always thought that maybe some of it was true and the part that I wanted to hang on to was just like the paradise hope, especially when my mom was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's because she was only 50. And by the time she was 58, she had passed away.
Uh, okay. Sorry to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah,
My mom, she's suffering from dementia. Yeah. So
yeah,
I've kept my departure quiet
yeah.
because they got baptized in the mid '60s, and I just,
Oh yeah,
they're early '80s. I just want them to just,
right,
concentrate
right.
on themselves.
Correct,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, but
Uh,
I think that even though, I think that based on what she experienced with being married for the second time to a witness, I think that is when she started to see it for what it was. I think that that changed her perspective, and but by the time it did, she was dealing with early dementia.
okay, that's crazy. And we
Yeah.
mentioned earlier about the deconstruction. Um, if you're listening,
Mhm.
we're referring to when we break away from that religion, like
Mhm.
we have to like just deconstruct everything they've crammed into our heads.
Yeah.
So you
And
said you've been
yeah.
out like 22 years
Mhm.
and you still feel you're going through
Yeah.
deconstruction.
Yeah, I still talk myself through certain situations because, even when it comes to going into other places of worship, you were always told, like, I remember you were told that you couldn't go, not for a wedding, not for a funeral, not for anything. And then later on, it was more relaxed to, oh, it's up to your Christian conscience. But I remember prior to that relaxed conversation, I remember my maternal grandmother had passed away. And, my mom had she had a lot of children, so my mom had a lot of siblings, and my mom was not going to go to her mother's funeral because it was going to potentially be held in a church, and I was really like alarmed by that. I was like, Mom, I wouldn't care where my mother's funeral was, I would go. I told her that, and so they made a lot of accommodations to make my mom feel comfortable. They elected to have it in a funeral home. They chose a brother from the Kingdom Hall, like, and then later on, her older sister thanked me for like pushing her to go because she was not going to go. And then they kind of made it more comfortable for her, and she went. But even when to me, there was a line between still having a family connection, even though I don't grow up around them, and the religion. Because I remember many conversations. She would try to get all her siblings to study. I remember she would try to get her mother to study, and my grandmother was not going to do that. She even would try to, she would call my mom on Mother's Day to see if my mom would say Happy Mother's Day. She would refuse. My grandmother would start crying. Like, I'm like, just say it in my mind. Like, what's wrong with appreciating your mother one day? It's not going to affect me.
Hmm. And so have you, did you ever go to a church when you were out?
Yeah, and I visit one now too. So the first time I went, it was definitely a culture shock because I had never went, and the only reference I had for a church was like what you see on TV. So I thought it was dramatization. I didn't think it was real, but I went to a real active one. They had tambourine. They were running around, and it was just not like the Kingdom Hall. So I didn't know which way to look. And I was there visiting with somebody, and about 15 minutes in, I had to step outside because it was just like overload for me.
Yeah.
And so I went to, a non-denominational one. It had like a little bit of a different tone, but yeah, I mean, eventually I was able to really enjoy, the
Mm.
service or enjoy, you know, going here and
Yeah.
there. So
They
yeah,
have you thinking like if you step inside of a church, you're just gonna like combust in flames. Like that's how they have
exactly. Exactly. And so when I first went, even though like I said, there was no reference point when I stopped going. So I did things, but in the back of my mind, I would be like scared. Like even though I was out for a long time, I never researched anything. I never looked at any quote unquote apostate materials, even the rare ones that was out there. But I think that what finally gave me the okay to start looking was in 2016, 2017. My mom had passed away Christmas Eve 2016. And then like I felt like at that point, like knowing what I know, okay, there's no paradise hope. All of this is a lie. I still wasn't comfortable saying it possibly was a cult per se, because that was only because I didn't do any research. But after I started looking, I went down the complete rabbit hole, started making connections. I was glued to YouTube. I was reaching out, all of those. It was like once I started looking, I really couldn't stop.
Hmm. Yeah,
I
that's why they
really couldn't.
looking.
Right, right. And I always thought that, and I would be at assemblies, and I would see, ex-Jehovah's Witnesses protesting. And I was like, oh, don't even look at them. Don't even look at them. Don't even listen to them. Don't. And I'm thinking to myself, like, wow, it must be some truth. Like, everybody can't be wrong. Everybody can't be wrong. So, but at that time, you're so, controlled by fear. If you even like absorb any of this, you don't do any research. You don't, you don't look any further. So even though I was out for a long time, I never really looked until, she had passed away. And so even, another thing that made me look too was when she passed away, she was living in St. Louis. I was living in Florida. She didn't want to be in Florida because she was still legally married to the elder. So she knew what was going on. She didn't want him to have access to her because, at one point, we needed power of attorney, because she was married. So we already had that in place. And so when she moved back and she passed away, I'm left to plan a funeral. So at that time, I was thinking, okay, let me do exactly what she would want to do. So I tried to reach out to that one elder that started studying with her, right? Because he lives in the Missouri area. So I didn't have his contact information, but I knew his last name and daughter's name. So I reached out to her on Facebook. And so I explained and she remembered. And the unfortunate thing was her father had passed away 2 years prior. So he was no longer living at the time because I was like, okay, he can just do it, because it felt personal that he knew her, but also that, still a witness, even though I didn't believe. So she told me, she was like, well, let me see if I can find another brother to do it for you. And she said, what was the last Kingdom Hall she went to? And her full name and your full name. So I already knew what she was going to find. So about 4 or 5 hours later, she blocked me on Facebook. She found out I was inactive, right? And she found out that, my mom, when she moved to St. Louis, she was going to the Kingdom Hall, but because of those issues, she couldn't be active in field service. And they had even contacted my aunt about removing her, disfellowshipping her because she wasn't going out in service, even though she had early onset Alzheimer's. Because I guess visually she didn't meet the description. Because if you looked at her and you saw her, you wouldn't even believe it. A lot of people thought we were sisters because she had me at such a young age. So to see somebody in their early 50s and you're saying that is the reason, you're not necessarily believed in the same way, or those accommodations aren't made for you. They even, the elders there even talked to her about her hair because my mom had locks. Like that was inappropriate because at the time we had locks, it wasn't as trendy or as common as you see now. So we got a lot of backlash from that at our Kingdom Hall in Florida. When she moved to St. Louis, it was even worse. So
And
all of those things
but you
kind of.
trying to plan a funeral for your mom
Hmm.
and like trying to do it according to what her wishes would have been.
Right.
And the sister who was helping you see you on Facebook and I guess see how you're living, and so she just
Hmm.
stopped talking and just blocked you.
I think it was that, and I also think it was the whole publisher's record card of what was the last call you went to, because I'm not sure what's on those cards, but I do know that they tell whether you're an active or you're not active. They don't tell the reason why. I'm assuming, I don't know what's on there, but my mom hadn't been active for a while because by the time she had passed away, she was in a nursing home.
Mm-hmm.
She needed that type of care, so she couldn't go. And then naturally, at that time, none of the witnesses were visiting her at that point. Um, I hadn't been going, so I know that I'm on a basic level. I'm guessing they say whether you're active or not.
I mean,
So
they would know. Yeah.
yeah, so they probably shared with her that we're both inactive, and she based that off that and blocked me. And I would say it had more to do with that because on Facebook I really didn't share that much to lead in one direction or the other.
Mm-hmm. And so, were you able to like give her a funeral? Like that? Oh,
Yeah, the interesting thing is her sister. her sister and my uncle, her husband, they have a church, and her sister's a pastor, so she eulogized her. I don't know how she could do it because that, being so close to somebody and having to do that, I couldn't do it. I told them in the beginning, I planned everything, but I said, don't even ask me to speak at this point. I like really couldn't do it. So her sister ended up doing it, and after it was done, everybody that should have been there was there, and I
Okay.
was happy with that.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Yeah. Though, that's the thing about that religion, Jehovah's Witnesses. They will pick something, and it'll be a stickler for them, and they will not budge. And
Right.
that's another thing that always bothered me too. But they always say that they're the true religion and so much love and
Hmm.
care. But yeah, you see actions that go against what they're saying, and
Right.
yeah, it's rough. And like, are there things that still bother you that like I'm talking about the deconstruction where you might hear something and it'll trigger something and then you're like, oh, I'm not in that crazy religion anymore.
Right. For me, the funny thing is gospel music, right? So I used to like gospel music even when I was in the organization. I didn't know it was wrong. And so when I used to, prior to her being married, I used to be home by myself a lot. I was like a latchkey kid. She had one day off work and I'm playing gospel music in the house. And she's like, Delores, what is going on? And I was like, well, what do you mean? Like, there was nothing wrong with it to me, but she like banned gospel music. So I used to have to sneak and listen to that if I wanted to listen to that. Out of all things, you wouldn't think that a teenager or a kid was singing and listening to that. But I didn't see anything wrong. So even now, like going into certain spaces and hearing things, mentally you have to kind of reset. These are okay. And it's really hard. And sometimes I feel a little bit socially awkward, even when it comes to being recognized, like if it's your birthday or getting gifts or whatever, it feels a little awkward to me.
Yeah,
Only because it's not a natural thing for me.
that is crazy because like I was like when you told me it's been out 22 years, I'm like, okay, surely she's gonna give me like a time frame of how long it lasted the construction, and you're saying you're still going through it.
It's still, I still struggle. And the interesting thing too is one of the things that I do is we own a dessert company, a sweet company. So here I am making birthday cakes, making all these holiday desserts or whatever. So while I didn't grow up doing it, I get a chance to do it now. But that's pretty much of it's an interesting thing for me.
Wow. I'm I'm glad you're doing well, and that gives me insight, and hopefully the listeners that it's an unspecified amount of time. Like we
Yeah,
are indoctrinated.
and it does like mentally, it does take a toll on you. Um, Even like during the process of my mom going through what she went through, I went to see a mental health care professional just to talk about some things because I grew up as an only child. My family support system, immediate family, blood family support system looked a lot different. So even when I began to share that with what was going on with my mom, it even let me know that that wasn't normal. Like how you grew up that dynamic, and until somebody else said it, it didn't really hit me like that because you grow up with that being your norm. Well, this is the way it is. So
Mm,
even, because I didn't grow up with those things, I didn't necessarily try to seek them out. I just was like, okay, this is what I'm going to deal with. But, when it comes to mental health, it's always good to check in. And, when you realize that you were indeed in a cult, you do need to check in with, you do need to check in with somebody. And, they really don't, as an organization, they really don't support mental health.
mm,
The interesting thing is, like, shortly after my mom got remarried, I was in a deep depression. So even though I was vocal, I was in a deep depression to the point where I had to be placed inpatient to get mental health services because of that. Now, while this was going on, nobody at the Kingdom Hall knew. They said I was visiting family, but I was gone for like a month, and I was taking school classes in that facility. So I was happy that she didn't have that same standpoint.
mm,
But, mental health is definitely just as important as physical health.
mm. I'm glad you mentioned that too, because people need to know that, like you mentioned, they're not big on in that organization on getting that help. They might
Right.
say something every once in a while to, like, you know,
Mhm.
make them seem like they're forward and everything. But yeah, it was always a stigma against it. But I had to
Right.
I had to see a therapist myself, and I remember one time they were like, um, do some more research about it being a cult, and
Mhm.
our next session, you let me know what you like came up with, and that's when I started like really just because when I walked away in December of 2024, I just kind of walked away,
Mhm.
faded out, didn't I wasn't actively doing anything like as an ex Jehovah's Witness. I just knew I felt better not being around them. But then it was like after they asked me to do that, I just started listening to more and more ex witnesses on YouTube. Then I
Mhm.
found a whole bunch on TikTok. And so I go back the next week and they're like, so what did you conclude? And I was like, I was in a cult, you know,
Right.
you know.
Right. And like you almost don't want to, you almost don't want to say it, but you indeed were. And you were, and it's just a hard pill to swallow because you think that, most people think of being in the cult and you think of like Jim Jones,
Yeah.
you think of those extreme situations, but it just shows you how powerful organized religion can be
Oh,
if
yeah.
people use it in a certain way and how destructive it can be. Especially when it comes, I would say I'm a bit fortunate when it comes to leaving and not having a whole lot of family still attached to it or never within it, so it was a little bit easy, but I really feel for people who are like second, third, fourth generation because that's all of your support system, and that would be hard to manage.
Hmm. Yeah. That's a huge pull on individuals. Even had a gentleman earlier this week told me that he was glad he found my TikTok account because
Yeah,
he was close to going back to the organization because he just
yeah,
didn't feel like he had anyone. And
right.
he was
So
like,
that,
so I was like, I'm glad you found this page.
right, just in time, because it does have a hold on you. Because I remember, like, prior to the what we see right now, the XJW spaces online, I would see people that I would know that aren't in or that was the fellowship, that were my peers. And I would see them online, socially here and there. And I remember one peer, she was a fellowship. She was like, yeah, I'm dating somebody and I'll only return if he gets baptized too. So she didn't really want to go back. She was only going to go back and eventually she did because she's back, she's in. But I'm like, why would you do that, knowing how they are or whatever? But with me, I never tried to like on a one-on-one basis. I never tried to steer anybody into a certain situation because the way that cult is, if you try to tell them they're a cult directly, one-on-one, that emboldens them to be like, oh, this is the truth or this is that. They have that, that martyr syndrome, like, oh, this is so I'm always, I'll tread very lightly. I may say things as a question and leave it at that, but it's not worth it. Like, I'm like, everybody doesn't want to be saved because at this point, if you're not seeing something different, it's because you choose not
Hmm. Yeah, and like you said, when like I was in over 50 years, and when you're
to.
all in, like that's the last thing you want to hear that you're in.
Right,
Yeah, and
right.
it's hard, but that's why I attempt to be as nice as possible online to
Hmm.
reason with them. It's something that push the right combination of buttons to where I act crazy, but
Right,
I try to
right.
keep it reined in.
Exactly. And I'm thinking to myself, what are you even doing in my face? Because you're told not to. So
Yeah.
why are you? I was on somebody else's page because I don't have any XJW content yet. I'm working on that because I feel like sometimes remaining silent is not helping the situation. It's kind of adding to it. Because sometimes people do need to see that there is life after that, especially coming from a space where, you know, I just left and I was like, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I was willing to take that chance. And I don't have any spaces yet, but I'm on somebody else's page. I'm going toe to toe with somebody. He's sending me a friend request because he wants to argue with me. I was like, look, I said, maybe there'll be some new light where you can talk to an apostate, but you are indeed actively talking to an apostate right now. So you
Mm-hmm.
might want, he didn't, after I told him like that, he left me alone. But there are, they get really bold about it and interactive. So I
Yeah,
don't know.
and I for most of them, I feel for them because like, and I tell them like I was once you. Like
Yeah,
I defended that religion like tooth and nail, but you know, I just try to be nice, and if even one person listen and get it, like
right.
I get it. But I do have witnesses, active witnesses that reach out to me, and like upper in the upper teen years, and it's one I feel so bad because she'll see something online that someone has posted, like an ex-witness, and
Hmm.
she'll like screenshot it and send it to me. And she just did it yesterday, and she was like, "Is this true? Tell me it's not true." And it was like a procedure that goes on in the organization, and
Hmm.
I'm like, "Yeah, that person was telling the truth. That's like that really goes on." And it's like I just want to be transparent so that people can make an informed decision. I never tell somebody just walk away, leave. Like that's not
Right.
that is.
Right.
A person commented a couple of weeks ago on one of my posts, and they were like, uh, "I'm gonna get baptized soon. I love Jehovah, and it's the best thing ever happened." And I said, "Congratulations. Keep that
Hmm.
conviction that you have now." Like
Right.
I do what I do just to like spread the transparency, but yeah, so many don't want to hear it, like the truth
They,
about what's
they
going
really
on.
don't want to hear it. And also, too, even if you're in, you notice that, you know, naturally, the headship is talked about a lot,
No,
right? Especially, it seemed like it was talked about a lot, and especially the way women are treated versus men are treated. You'll never get a chance to really excel. You may be able to be a pioneer, a special pioneer, but that's where it stops for you. And even when it comes down to disciplinary actions, I remember that my mom had a friend. They both were dating at around the same time. They were both single parents. She told my mom before it was announced that she was going to be put on public recruit because she had gotten pregnant before they got married. But then she went on to tell him that the brother was being put on private recruit. And I was like, Mom, why is there a difference between what happened? She was like, oh, they told her because she's going to start showing soon. She has to be put on public and he's on private. I'm like, that would lead you to believe it was somebody else that she was with and not him. They both did the same thing. Why is he protected? So there's certain things that go on. I think that women are punished a little bit more harshly when wrongdoings happen than their counterparts.
oh yeah, and I've been like cringing at a lot of the stories that the women have been telling me, like how they were
Mhm.
treated and what goes on, and like what you just said, and it's yeah, like this a couple that have both gotten in trouble, they should both be like it should be
Mhm.
equal,
Right. What's good for one is good for all.
and that's one of the reasons why I'm like interviewing a bunch of women like it's a slap in their face. Like they don't want to respect women and they don't want women to have a
Right.
voice. It's very, very openly chauvinistic
Hmm.
in that organization. Like I've heard men say some pretty crazy things about how they felt about women, and I would check them because I'm like one, you're an elder, but two, all this stuff we're always, how we're supposed to be loving to everyone, and but the
Right.
organization is very chauvinistic. They'll like say it's not, but it is.
It is.
And I
It
never really liked how they treated um, the women, and that's why I'm trying to give you all a voice now.
is. And also too, like I was very like looking at the dynamics of even the body of elders that was in my congregation. A
Mm,
lot of them, most for the elders that were born in or that became an elder, they don't have any post-secondary education. So, and sometimes the jobs that they do, they're not in leadership roles. So I
mm,
think that when they get an opportunity to be in a leadership role, they do it with an iron fist. You see what I'm saying? So sometimes I think that's the reason for the harshness. My mom's husband was the exception because he didn't grow up in, he actually had a degree. So, that's pretty uncommon for an elder who had a degree, you know what I'm saying, who is, but as I thought through it, you have these men that don't have positions of power anywhere else, 9 times out of 10. And then when they do have a extension of power, they're not as like their leadership doesn't come through.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree with all of that because, like I told you, I recorded me ranting before this in my episode that I'm going to post along
Hmm.
with yours. Is that, yeah, that what you just said is basically what I was saying, that they get this status within an
Hmm.
organization. And I said, most of them, when they leave in the real world, it's like they're a nobody. But,
Yeah.
they step in the Kingdom Hall or a circuit assembly or a convention and, they
Hmm.
chest poke out and, I'm
Right.
this overseer, I'm that overseer. I gave this talk, that talk. And yeah, it's
Right.
crazy. And I want people to know that too. So I'm glad you brought that out because, like, if it's somebody who's studying, they need to know that too about,
Right.
about that organization.
Right. Because I think that people that begin studying and people that are very new, they really don't. It's like, you get love bombed. You really don't see it
Oh,
for what it is until you're some years in. You really realize how the hierarchy works. And by then it's too late. You're already in.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So in in conclusion, what would you say first? What would you say to someone um, that may be a teenager or an early adult that they know who they are inside, but they feel trapped because of the religion, but they know that it's different from what the viewpoints that the religion has,
Hmm.
like they're very anti against homosexuality, something like that. What would you say to that person, that teen or the early adult that's feeling trapped?
I would say that start planning have an escape plan. You know what I'm saying? That you are in this current situation, but it's only temporary. So while it may seem like, okay, this is where I am, there's no hope, I don't like, all of your resources are tied to the organization, there's always another option. Start thinking it through, start making your exit plan, and even have small goals on what you need to do to get where you are to put some separation between. I would say if that's your only source of support, you may not want to be as vocal until you've executed your escape plan because you don't want it to fail. But I would say there's hope. It gets better. It gets better. But when you surround yourself with an organization that spews a certain message, you won't see it. So stay positive, come up with your escape plan, and know that there is the other side.
All right, well said.
Mhm.
What would you say to the person like me who was recently
Mhm.
out and just the outlook on the future and you
Mhm.
know
Keep doing what you're doing because it helps. Like here you are, we're in contact. I'm 22 years out, and this is my first time even showing my face or talking about why I left.
mm,
So keep doing what it matters. There's a lot of us out there that just haven't had the opportunity or still like even though we're physically out at some point it still has a mental hold on us. So the more visible you are, the more helpful
okay,
you know, even for the opposition you get online from people that are still in, there's a little bitty voice inside of them. That's what makes them interact with you. Because if it was the truth and they were okay with the truth, they would keep scrolling. Because if the truth, if it's the truth and if that's what you believe, nothing would affect you.
mm.
Nothing would.
They hate when I tell them that. I said I
Right.
because you have doubts and you have questions. That's why
Exactly.
you're looking at me.
Because we all know the truth will defend itself.
Yep.
Whatever it was, the truth doesn't change. It will defend. So all this new light, if it was the truth, it wouldn't change. The
Yeah.
truth never changed. So, hmm
And then for those that have been out a while, like you, some I talk to, have been out 10 years, you're out 22, some 30 and 40, and sometimes they still struggle with things. Like, what would you say to the ones who've been out a long time, like yourself?
Um, it's good to find a support system, a community. Sometimes when you're out, that community is going to look a lot different from when you're in. It'll be people that maybe don't even know what you've gone through, but it's okay to find a community. It's okay to have those safe spaces because support helps. That was the draw when you were in an organization because you seem to have a full support system. And the glue that they use to pull you back in is removing that support system. So you need to find a way to quickly replace it. Join groups, find something you like to do. It's okay to have a hobby. It's okay to get out there and social and mingle. The more you isolate yourself, the more they win.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate you. You said something a couple of minutes ago. You said this is your first time. You've been out 22 years, and this is your first time just publicly saying something. So I applaud you.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. I haven't made a recording. I told one of my one of my friends, like I have a lot of peers that are no longer in, but as far as a friend that I keep in contact with, I told him I was gonna do. He's like, "What?" We both been out for a long time, but the shocking. I was like, "Why not?" We both are out. We both are doing really well. There are certain things that when you were in, you never would imagine yourself doing because you were told you couldn't achieve it. He's doing very well. And people need to see that it's not all gloom and doom. You can leave it behind. You can be very successful. There is hope. And I told him, I'm thinking about maybe sharing a little bit more. But the interesting thing we talked about too is even though we know there are a lot of us that are no longer in the group, when I reach out to some, I realize even though they're not witnesses, they are very standoffish. And what I think is the reason is because sometimes they have put it so far past them that maybe I'm a reminder. And maybe they just want to leave it in the rearview mirror. And I'm okay with that because people heal in a different way, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate you being on here and being so open and candid about everything. I think it'll help a lot of the listeners, you know,
Sure.
especially the ones that feel trapped. And
Hmm.
like my daughter, she was just, I could tell something, it was always something she wasn't truly happy. And,
Right,
now that we've walked away, she told me because she had those feelings, but she knew she
right.
could never be accepted, and she was worried
Hmm.
about what me or her mom would think. And,
Yeah,
I know it's a lot feel like that probably in the
yeah,
organization.
yeah.
And just knowing that organization is just like something made up and full of crap. They're going through all of this
Right,
for
right, right. It's just like they're pulling things out of the hat. And even for me, the organization looks quite different than it was when I was in it now, just based on what I hear, see, or whatever. It's not even the same as it was. When I first saw people with carts standing by them, I was shocked because I was like, wow, that's different. You know what I'm saying? Like, even the organization, it looks and feels a lot different than it really is, than it was in the 90s, in the early 2000s. It's not even the same. So I think that they are making certain changes so that they can have retention,
oh yeah,
so that they can attract more.
they how it was back in the day that you're referring to. That's just how it was. They wasn't going to budge for anyone. Take it or leave it. But now, like you said, I think it's just strictly for retention because
Hmm.
the things they're doing for us a long time as it made us gasp at first.
Right, right. Especially with when I heard they came out with the beard thing, I was like, because you remember it was if a brother showed up with the after five shadow, it was the talk, and they couldn't, they were disciplined, they couldn't have privileges. You know, to me, if it was never a problem, why were people treated differently? If
Yeah,
it was never a problem, why is it treated differently? And if I was still in, certain things would bother me. Even though while it may not be doctrine, I would be like, okay, they're playing games because why is this okay one day and why is it okay not okay the next
oh yeah, yeah. It bothered me the changes they were making. I did, you can't really tell anybody.
day? Right. Right.
Can't go against the grain of the machine, but it's like,
Mhm.
yeah, a lot of that bothered me. I'm like, for decades we've gone this long, but now all of a sudden
Mhm.
it's okay, and
Right.
yeah, a lot of things wrong with that organization. But I'm glad
Yeah.
that we met though. It's
Me
nice
too. Me
on that
too.
group. Like I mentioned, I have a private Facebook group, so
Mhm.
that we can have a little privacy, the ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, without those pesky
Right.
witnesses popping up. But it's if you're on Facebook, it's the EXJW Network, and I've also made a website this week. Same thing, the exjwnetwork.org, and on there, I made a discussion forum page, and you have to be approved. I have to approve everyone who's in there. So it's like
Okay.
I wanted to give everybody a chance just to have even more support uh,
Yeah.
in privacy. Because
Right. Right.
social media, they jump up and spewing
Right.
hatred. So
Exactly. And I remember this just came up. I remember, although I didn't have any immediate family that were witnesses, my
mm,
dad had an older brother when my mom first came in. He was a witness. He was an elder. He used to give talks at conventions, but then he got disfellowshipped by the time I was a teenager. So when I would go hang out with them and he would come into town, my mom was totally against it, but she couldn't do anything because my dad's time, when he chose to use it, was his time. And so he talked to me, this was like in the late 90s, and he was like, you know what, Delores, I think that, there should be a support system for ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. And this was in the late 90s, right? Because I know he could tell that, he knew enough to know that I wasn't all in. And I thought that was so interesting, ex-Jehovah's Witness, that term then and support system. And I listened, and he's been out for a long, long time. He's like maybe in his early 70s now, but when he told me that was a little bit okay. This made my plan feel a little bit better because he used to be when he's out, it's doable.
yeah, all right. That's interesting that he said that though. That it needs to be.
Yeah, his phrasing, and I always remember that wording. I was like,
Yeah, we do need it, and like it helps me daily just interacting with
hmm,
all of you all. I can't even imagine like just being in it before the internet got so big. You know,
right,
I would imagine you just feel all alone and
yeah.
everything.
And when you did run across somebody that was an extrovert, you like cringing because you want to listen, but what you were told, it was a battle.
Mm,
So
yeah, and so this has been nice. I'm glad we got the opportunity to
me
have
too,
a discussion, and
me
uh,
too.
I think this episode with you will help a lot of people since you been out for so long. I think it'll be helpful to
Mhm.
a lot, myself included. So I really, really appreciate it.
Good. Well, thank you for making the time, and it's kind of putting me on a path to like sharing a little bit more. So I'm gonna start with YouTube because my other social media platforms are driven towards my sleep business. So I don't want to cut across the two, but I think I'm gonna start sharing a little bit more on YouTube.
YouTube is a great avenue to go for ex Jehovah's Witnesses.
Hmm.
A lot are on there.
Okay.
A lot of support. I get a lot of support from different countries too on YouTube. So
Okay.
that'll be a good place for you to start. And I found out like for some reason, the longer the videos are on YouTube, the more views you get.
That's odd because any other place you have to be like 7 seconds, 10 seconds to kind of like TikTok. You have to kind of keep it short. But
Yeah,
but with
YouTube, they like
with
long
that, I'm surprised.
videos. Mm,
Okay.
yeah, so
Okay.
keep
Good
that
to
in
know.
mind. And when you feel comfortable enough to, start sharing more, like,
Hmm.
because you're very
I
well
do.
spoken and you have a lot of good to say. So I think you'll really be an asset to the ex-witness community and the support
Yeah.
system.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And if you wouldn't have told me, I would have thought you were out longer. So it's good that you just jumped right into it. Because a lot of people like me don't. I was just thinking, oh, I'm free, I'm out. You know what I'm saying? I wanted to put that in my rearview mirror. So, but there are certain things that, when your foundation is rocked and you realize it was all a lie, that's a very scary place to be for a while.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's where I was. But
Hmm.
Yeah, thankfully, I have individuals like yourself that like you're helping
Hmm.
me through it, so I appreciate it.
Good. You're welcome.
Yeah. So I hope you all enjoy this episode. I enjoy doing this. I like getting to know people, and I like bringing transparency to all my listeners and viewers. So, yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this episode and take care of yourself and each other and go and do great things.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.